In 1699, Virginia's leaders made a decisive shift inland. After repeated fires and disease at Jamestown, the seat of government moved to Middle Plantation, a settlement on higher ground between the James and York River watersheds. Renamed Williamsburg in honor of King William III, the town's location mattered as much as its name. Roads could reach it from the plantations along both rivers, and its elevation reduced the constant threat of flooding and stagnant marsh water. From the start, Williamsburg was built to function as a capital. Surveyors laid out a planned street grid, with the broad Duke of Gloucester Street forming a central spine that connected the emerging public buildings and the social spaces that served them. The town did not replace the plantation economy. It organized it. Political life concentrated quickly. The colonial assembly and courts needed rooms, records, and routine. Early sessions relied on existing structures, including facilities tied to the College of William and Mary, founded in 1693 and already shaping the area as an educational center. Within a few years, purpose-built government followed. Construction of a new capital began early in the century and was completed in 1705, giving Virginia's legislature a permanent home for the Governor's Council and the House of Burgesses. Nearby, the decision to finance a governor's residence signaled a more formal, more visible expression of royal authority. Work on the governor's palace began in 1706, and even while it remained unfinished for years, the site helped define a political landscape in brick, symmetry, and controlled space. Williamsburg's economy reflected its role. The town lived on the seasonal flow of planters, lawyers, merchants, and officeholders. Taverns, shops, and small workshops clustered along the main street, supplying food, lodging, clothing, tools, and printed notices. That commerce depended on the wider Chesapeake system, where tobacco dominated exports and credit tied local producers to Atlantic markets. Enslaved labor underwrote much of that wealth, not only on surrounding plantations but also in the town itself, where enslaved people worked in kitchens, stables, construction, and household service. Social life followed the lines of power. Anglican worship and civic ceremony reinforced rank, while institutions like the college and the expanding parish church helped set standards for language, law, and public conduct. Over time, Williamsburg's planned form and concentrated authority created habits of governance that would outlast the colonial era, shaping how Virginia managed expansion, conflict, and political change across the 18th century. By the 1730s and 1740s, Williamsburg stood as the administrative heart of Virginia. Its broad main street linked the capital at one end and the governor's palace at the other, creating a physical axis of authority. The town remained small in population, yet its influence reached across the colony's expanding frontier. Tobacco exports continued to anchor the economy, binding planters to British credit networks and Atlantic shipping routes. Merchants in Williamsburg managed imports of textiles, tools, books, and luxury goods, distributing them through local shops and to surrounding plantations. Court days and assembly sessions brought waves of visitors, filling taverns and boarding houses and reinforcing the town's role as a meeting place for legal disputes, commercial negotiations, and political debate. Political culture matured within these brick walls. The House of Burgesses gained experience in taxation, public finance, and militia organization, often negotiating with royal governors over prerogatives and revenue. The governor's palace symbolized imperial oversight, yet practical governance required cooperation. This balance became more visible after mid-century. The French and Indian War, beginning in 1754, placed new demands on Virginia's treasury and manpower. Williamsburg coordinated supply contracts, troop levies, and defensive planning for settlements pushing westward beyond the Blue Ridge. Financial strain deepened the colony's dependence on British credit while also sharpening awareness of legislative authority over internal taxation. Intellectual life developed alongside politics. The College of William and Mary educated many of the colony's leading figures, reinforcing legal training and classical learning that shaped public speech. Printing presses circulated laws, pamphlets, and newspapers, spreading information beyond the capital. Social order remained structured by race and class. Enslaved labor continued to sustain both plantation wealth and urban households. Free white artisans and small traders worked within a hierarchy that favored established families tied to land and office. Anglican worship at Bruton Parish Church marked the rhythm of public life, blending faith with civic identity. After 1763, the imperial relationship shifted, Britain's attempt to recover war costs through new taxes, including the Stamp Act of 1765, ignited resistance within the House of Burgesses. Resolutions challenging parliamentary authority emerged from debates held in the capital. While protests in port towns drew attention, Williamsburg provided legislative structure to colonial opposition. Non-importation agreements altered commercial patterns, pressuring British merchants and signaling a willingness to use economic leverage. By the early 1770s, committees of correspondence connected Virginia to other colonies, coordinating responses to imperial policy. The capital's established institutions, originally designed to manage royal governance, now supplied the framework through which dissent could be organized, debated, and recorded, steadily redefining the meaning of authority within Virginia. By 1774, Williamsburg had become a center of organized resistance as well as established authority. The House of Burgesses continued to meet in the capital, but tensions with royal governor Lord Dunmore intensified. When the Burgesses declared a day of fasting in support of Massachusetts after the closing of Boston's port, Dunmore dissolved the assembly. In response, members reconvened at the Raleigh Tavern, forming extra-legal conventions that began to assume governing functions. These gatherings reflected a structural shift. Political leadership moved from royal appointment toward locally chosen delegates, and Williamsburg provided the physical setting where the transition took shape. Economic uncertainty deepened. Non-importation agreements reduced British goods in local shops, altering trade patterns that had long defined the town's commercial life. Merchants adjusted inventories, and planters reconsidered credit ties across the Atlantic. Enslaved labor remained central to daily work, yet imperial conflict introduced new instability. In 1775, Dunmore removed gunpowder from the public magazine, prompting armed response from militia units in surrounding counties. The incident exposed how fragile royal authority had become. Later that year, Dunmore's proclamation offering freedom to enslaved men who joined British forces added another layer of disruption, drawing the institution of slavery directly into the conflict and unsettling plantation society across the region. Military pressure mounted along the Virginia coast. By late 1775, clashes between Patriot forces and British troops led to Dunmore's withdrawal from Williamsburg. The governor eventually retreated to British ships in the Chesapeake, and the capital stood without effective royal control. In 1776, Virginia's Fifth Convention met in the capital and adopted a Declaration of Rights and a new state constitution. These documents replaced colonial structures with republican governance, redefining sovereignty as resting with the people of Virginia rather than the crown. Williamsburg thus shifted from royal capital to revolutionary seat of government within months. The war years strained resources. Inflation affected prices in town markets, and troop movements disrupted normal trade. Public buildings served military and administrative purposes, linking civic space to wartime necessity. Yet the town's geographic position, inland but accessible by road, remained strategically valuable. It continued to host legislative sessions and legal proceedings even as campaigns unfolded elsewhere in the colony. By 1779, concerns about vulnerability to British attack and the desire for a more central location led to the decision to move the capital to Richmond. The transfer marked the end of Williamsburg's primary political role, but its institutions and precedents had already shaped Virginia's transformation from colony to commonwealth. The decision to relocate Virginia's capital in 1779 signaled a practical response to war and geography. Richmond lay farther inland along the James River, less exposed to naval attack and closer to the growing population beyond the tidewater. When the General Assembly met there for the first time, Williamsburg's long tenure as the colony's administrative center formally ended. Yet between 1779 and 1780, the town did not fall silent. Courts continued to function, and the College of William and Mary remained active, educating young men who would participate in the new republic. Local commerce persisted at a reduced scale, sustained by surrounding plantations and the routines of town residents. The Revolutionary War still touched Williamsburg directly. British forces under General Benedict Arnold moved through Virginia in 1780 and early 1781, threatening communities along the James. Although large-scale fighting would culminate at Yorktown in 1781, within the period up to 1780 the town experienced uncertainty rather than open siege. Militia units organized in the region, drawing on structures first built under colonial law. Public buildings that once housed royal authority now supported state governance and wartime administration. The Capitol and palace grounds reflected a transition already underway, from imperial outpost to state center, even as political power shifted elsewhere. Economically, the decline in official activity reduced the seasonal influx of legislators and visitors that had sustained taverns and shops for decades. Artisans adapted by serving local agricultural needs. Tobacco remained the dominant export crop, but wartime disruption and changing markets complicated credit and shipping arrangements. Enslaved labor continued to underpin plantation production and urban households, though the language of liberty circulating since 1776 introduced tensions that would persist beyond the war. Social hierarchies endured, yet the framework of law had altered. The Virginia Declaration of Rights and the state constitution, drafted in Williamsburg in 1776, continued to guide governance even after the capital moved. By 1780, Williamsburg's role had shifted from active political center to institutional foundation. Its planned streets, public buildings, and legislative precedents had provided a model for organized civil authority in Virginia. The town's geographic position between the James and York Rivers had once justified its selection as capital, balancing access and safety. As settlement expanded westward, that balance changed. Still, the 81 years between 1699 and 1780 left a durable imprint. Decisions made in its assembly rooms shaped taxation, defense, education, and the language of rights. Williamsburg's influence persisted in the structures of state government that emerged from Revolution, even as the center of power moved upriver.